This is where one of the first houses on the Montana frontier sat. It was homesteaded in 1889. We are in the process of rebuilding it. Today we tackle the no mortar stone foundation, and we talk about some of the crazy decisions we had to make last week. All right, so here's the old cornerstone for Uncle Dan, and I think we're gonna put the new, much larger cornerstone right on top of it.
We are rebuilding a house out here on the Montana prairie. To do that, we literally had to explode this house into 5 parts. It's not to destroy it though, it's to save it. This 1889 homestead house is about to disappear for a minute and then return. If you remember last episode, we got gut punched by some of the secrets this house was hiding. They made us reevaluate our plan. It got more drastic and more crazy until we are where we are now. Let's get into today's work. If we are going to have 4 stone foundation walls built using no mortar, then we need to lift and move these old cabin walls. We'll show you what we did with them in just a minute, and they are not getting burned.
It's another freezing day at Uncle Dan's. Well, this is my first time coming out to see it since Robbie got all the debris cleared up. So all that's left is the floor. Oh man. It definitely has the smell of a skunk. Yeah, it's a little bit ripe. You can see how the walls were just packed full of grain and 130 years of life. It was time to give it a good clean. Robbie's out in the field praying for the seeds to pop up. Crops just aren't doing much. All right, it's too unpleasant for me. All right, it's time we do something with this floor. Of course, in real life, it was not that quick, and actually it was a lot more exciting.
There's a skunk in there when I lifted up the floor.
Maggie! There's a skunk! Under the floor! It smelled like a skunk. I literally talked about it earlier, today. It's like, it's skunky.
No, I lifted up and you just see it.
Oh! Yeah! I don't think it got him. But... No, you got him!
That looks like the same skunk that was out at Robbie's parents' house a couple days ago, so it was his time to go.
That, you can see, it's not tongue and groove. I assumed it would have been tongue and groove. They just did their overlap.
But it isn't.
I have that piece of wood.
So it's just boards on top of boards.
Yep, slightly overset.
So when we go to rebuild it, we'll either do it that way or we'll...
Lots of poop! It's poop!
Yeah.
We didn't burn the walls, we didn't burn the boards. Just the rotted underneath of the floor and years of animal debris. A good cleansing fire to start the fresh work off with a solemn but hopeful beginning. With a tear in our eye, we laced up our boots, excited for the next step, laying the dry stone foundation. But for tonight, we all go home to rest.
And here's where the old rotten beams sat. Each corner got a stone, and then the wood sat right on the ground. And we're just gonna follow that line. We're gonna put down stone instead of wood, and we'll build the floor off of that. But it's right in line with where everything was. It's just gonna be a little bit newer, that's all. All right, these are the rocks we've got to work with. We're gonna go with the biggest ones first and do all the corners, and then we'll work down to the smaller ones. But every rock is important. We need just as many small pack rocks as we do giant perfect cubes. All right, so here's the old cornerstone for Uncle Dan. And I think we're gonna put the new, much larger cornerstone right on top of it. Yeah, come forward a little more. There it goes. You're hitting the line. There you go. Woo! As much as it seems like, oh yeah, you just throw a bunch of stones on top of each other, that's not exactly, I mean, it's pretty simple. I only have one tool with me today, and that's a hammer, and you don't even really need that for the type of wall I'm building, which is just rubble stone. But basically, there are a few principles that you have to stick to, or else the wall just falls down. So to build a wall that lasts actually takes more skill than you'd think, and I'm an amateur. This is not a perfect example of how to build a wall, but this is a good example of if you have a lot of irregular stones, not the best stone, all of that, you can still build a quality foundation wall. You just have to use the principles. It's basically frictional force and gravity. These walls can last, well over 1,000 years. How many things can you say that about in today's world? I don't know. I'm not saying this will last 1,000 years. This has a lot of stones like this. Pretty hard to use. Even with my hammer, which is just a bricky hammer. It's nothing special. If I can get anything flat, it helps. Flat surfaces are better. And bigger stones are better. But you know what? We use what we got. We use what we got.
We've been waiting to use these stones for about 6 months now. Back in January, Jesse was excited to tell me a little bit about how everything would come together.
The batter.
The batter? Why is that the batter?
So it has a slope. So when you stack a dry stone wall, you don't go straight up and down. You actually put it at a slope. And almost every culture around the world uses the same mathematical slope. It's just what works with gravity. But this stone has natural batter. and then the length runs into the wall. So the wall would be going this way, and the longest part of the stone runs into the wall, and that's what locks it down so it won't tip. These.
So you use a lot of the shimrocks?
Yeah, so anything that's like a thin, tight wedge. So let's say we stack 2 of these on top of each other, and there's just a little wiggle room. Something like a shimrock slips in and locks. And then this won't shift anymore. So they're simple and they're small, but they make everything lock super tight.
To throw it back to those original walls and what we did with them, you saw how we stacked all 4 gingerly just outside the hayfields. We did this for a reason. We love this old house. We are rebuilding it in order to save its architecture, to save the way it has looked for all these years, standing alone in a field just off a remote Montana highway, a marker of the long-gone western frontier. Any bits of the original that we can hold on to, we are tucking away. We took special care with the north wall, as it has a great patina to the boards. We're hoping to bring the entire wall back into the rebuilt 1889 house. We'll see if we can pull that off. We got some great ideas from the comments last week on how to get rid of any lingering animal smells. Until that moment arrives, we're saving the square nails and stacking old boards that we pried off the outside of Uncle Dan's cabin. Every bit of history means something to us. If we can put it back into the rebuilt house, we will.
All right, so in between loading hay onto trucks, Robbie's been helping me put a little more structure into these windows. Mostly doing his penance or running over the window that I brought out there to test fit. That was not fun. But yeah, we could beef these up a little bit and it would at least make them stronger. So that's what we're gonna do right now. So yeah, he ripped some wood strips for me, and basically we've added them to the edges. That's gonna make the windows a lot stronger, basically just for transport, getting them back and forth. Once they're in, they'll be super strong and safe. But yeah, I'm glad we beefed them up. All right, so our friend's grandpa, his name's Nobby, and he tells this story about how they had this wheelbarrow from the old country, right? And this wheelbarrow, man, it's an heirloom. They've had it forever. And the joke of it is, he says, oh, well, the bin on it, you know, the bucket's been replaced twice, the handlebars have been replaced once, and the wheel's been replaced a bunch of times. And at some point, you kind of have to ask yourself, is it the same wheelbarrow? That's kind of the same conundrum with Uncle Dan's, right? It's the Theseus' ship paradox, as Dungeon Minister commented last week, which I thought was like a great comment. But it's that question of, at what point have you fixed something so many times or repaired something to such an extent that it just isn't the same thing anymore? I don't know. I mean, the human body replaces every cell over a 7-year period, right? But you're still you. I mean, you don't become somebody else every 7 years. I don't know the answer. I think about this a lot with Uncle Dan's cabin. It's just some of the stuff I think about while I'm stonewalling. Man, it's such a cool art form. I mean, this has to be some of my favorite work. It's repetitive, it's simple, but oh man, it is satisfying. This is a great project. This is a great project to use for dry stone walling because it doesn't really matter if there's some life in these walls. It's just gonna be a historic foundation. That's good enough for me. Not too dissimilar from what this cabin had at the start. Stone is just pretty hard to come by on this ranch, so they didn't have as many stones as we have right now. They put in some cornerstones and they called it a day pretty much. So we hauled some ourselves from the old railroad grade, and we brought some in from a local quarry. A couple loads of it. I don't know, for every 3 foot by 3 foot section of dry stone wall, that's 1 ton of stone, which is that is just a massive amount. When you think that every single rock is placed by hand. You might move it with a skid steer here or there, which is a godsend, but at the end of the day, every single one of these rocks gets put in and lifted at least once, but because I'm not very good at it, more likely twice by hand. But man, is it fun. I just love this work.
Mending wall. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen groundswell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun, and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair where they have left not one stone on a stone. They would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. The gaps, I mean. No one has seen them made or heard them made, but in spring mending time we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go, to each the boulders that have fallen to each. Some are loaves, some are nearly balls. We have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay there until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game. One on a side, it comes to little more. There, where we do not need a wall, he is all pine and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never cross and eat the cones of his pines, I tell him. He says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is a mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built the wall, I'd asked to know what it is I was walling in or walling out. To whom am I like to give offense? Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly. I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there, bringing a stone firmly grasped at the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, it seems to me. Not the woods only or the shade of the trees. He will not go behind his father's saying. He likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors.
Literal tons of stone have been placed, one at a time, to make this foundation. Dry stacked walls are an historically accurate method that respects the legacy of this 1889 homestead. The original house may have only had 4 cornerstones, but the new dry stacked walls are right in line with what the first homesteader here would have chosen if the ranch wasn't so short on stone. Next episode, we finish up the final walls, and we start in on making a wooden floor, made from the trees grown, cut, and milled right here on this land. The dark days are behind us. New life is ahead.